good day. My name's Enrique Alvarez, and welcome to another interesting episode of Logistics with Purpose. I'm with my fearless co-host, Kristi Porter. Kristi, how are you doing today? Good morning.
Good morning. I'm glad to be here. We have a really fun guest. We've had a lot of fun getting to know her behind the scenes just now. So I'm excited to introduce her to everyone else and have her be able to tell them her story about her amazing company and a little bit about herself. So I'm delighted to introduce Tara Milburn, President and CEO of Ethical Swag, a certified B Corporation. You know we love those, specializing in sustainable promotional products. She is also a member of the Forbes Business Council and has a purpose-driven soul. I love that. Tara, welcome. We were also just talking behind the scenes. I'm visiting Nova Scotia right now. You are a, what is it, native Nova Scotian? Is that the correct terminology?
Actually, uh, I'm a CFA, if you want to be completely technical, which
Okay.
stands for Come From Away. And so
Yes.
I'm originally I'm originally from Montreal, and love brought me here. My husband is originally from Cape Breton, and so we went to Vancouver for the first 11 years of our marriage, and had a couple of kids out there. And then he said, "I want to be closer to family," and so Montreal French was not really an option, and so we came to Cape Breton. So yes, come from away, a CFA
Okay.
on Cape Breton Island, but it is my home, and we're running our own little science experiment. We have two kids born in Vancouver and one kid born in Cape Breton Island,
Oh,
because
yeah.
I'm like, people that are born in Cape Breton, see, there's something in the water or something that they have this pull to come home, and so my
Oh,
husband had it, and that's what got me here, and now we're running our own little science experiment. Now,
oh, that's fabulous.
interestingly, I have one child living in Vancouver, one child living in Calgary, and the youngest, who was born in Cape Breton, is still in Cape Breton. So
That's a lot
right
of
now,
country to
this
cover. Yeah.
it is.
A
Yeah.
lot of country to cover. Wow, that is amazing. And for those who haven't seen it, it is worth an Apple TV subscription just to watch the musical Come From Away, which is, of course, that the whole city of Gander, Newfoundland, became home to a bunch of planes were diverted during 9/11 and had to set down in Gander, Newfoundland, and they took them in. And it's a beautiful, beautiful musical. But I'm so delighted that you brought that up. And wow, yes, Canada, as I've been traversing across it, is enormous. So I cannot imagine trying to get from one end to the other back and forth. And I would definitely, if I were you, make your kids come to you instead. I guess that's the benefit of them growing up.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
Well,
welcome.
thanks for
We are
joining us.
delighted to have you on the show. Thank you for your time. Well, to start us off, I love all the anecdotes you've given us so far. But to start us off, before we get into your career and ethical swag, I'm going to ask you just some quick fire questions, and you give me the first thing that comes to mind, okay?
Sounds good.
Okay. So, well, this is a good one to start with for you. What is your must-have travel item?
Oh, my phone. I guess that's not a very good answer, is it?
It's true.
But like when I'm walking out the door, phone and passport, like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
must
and
have.
everything else you can sort of you can live without,
That's true.
So yeah, that's not very fun, is it?
No, but
But
it is an absolute necessity. We notice it the minute it is not at our side. That's for sure. Um,
yeah.
what are you reading or listening to right now that has caught your attention?
Reading or listening to, I love listening to
Hmm.
podcasts. And interestingly, my daughter sent to me Amy Poehler and Michelle Obama.
Yes.
That they just did Amy Poehler just interviewed Michelle Obama, and I'm kind of enjoying this sort of next version of Michelle Obama. To be completely
Hmm.
honest, it's sort of her sort of, we're very close in age. I've read her book, and it's just interesting. I just find her very interesting in
Yeah.
how she's traversed her public life and her private life, and honestly, her family life. Because I think as women in business, I think family is such a priority for us,
Hmm.
and sometimes people make assumptions around women in business when they choose to step back. Um, for their family. And so I've just found her very interesting. And that was the last podcast that I listened to. I do listen to the Knowledge Project.
Oh, I didn't know that one.
Oh, it's amazing. It's basically and I can't remember Shane's his first name, Shane something from the Knowledge Project. He goes really deep with experts in their fields. So the podcasts are like an hour long, and it's the most random things. What I really like about it is I just let them come up because I learn things. Like there was a negotiation expert for hostage negotiation. I'm like, that's not going to be interesting to me. And yet I listened to it and it was super interesting and I learned something. There was an international poker player that was like in the top 10 or whatever. I was like, that's not going to be interesting to me. But like, it's really interesting because it's the stuff that I wouldn't necessarily choose. And yet I find it fascinating. There's so many different little nuggets that you can take from business, honestly. You know, the poker player was talking about chance. Like, how do you become the best when you have no idea what cards are going to be played?
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Like, think about that.
About such a deep level of expertise about something you don't know anything about, I think is always fascinating as well.
Exactly.
So that's really interesting. And yes, I think one thing often overlooked about Michelle Obama, especially whenever she was, Mrs. POTUS, is she was so funny, and you don't get to see that in political spheres very often. And she has such a great sense of humor. So thank you for that. Sunrise or sunset? You've had Vancouver to Cape Breton. You've had two very different, beautiful experiences. So sunrise or sunset?
What's my preference?
Yeah.
Yeah, sunset.
Okay.
It was definitely sunrise when my kids were little, but because I saw it work.
Sleep in a little.
Yeah,
makes sense. And speaking of your expertise, what is one eco-friendly habit that you recommend to others?
Be conscious about how you're spending your money. Think about it. Just don't blindly, I'm just going to do it. Think about it, because there's so many options, there's so many choices. Let's just not walk blindly through the world.
Good.
That's a really good piece of advice, and I think that's something that not only us and communities would benefit from, but just the whole world. You're right. We consume too much. There's no other way of putting it, right? We should stop buying random stuff.
Totally. And think about the stuff that you are buying.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Tara, thank you very much for your answers. Now, I would like to hear a little bit more about your background. Tell us a bit about your childhood, some stories, things that actually happened to you that you remember that kind of started shaping the person and successful entrepreneur that you are now.
Wow. How long do we have? I'm a talker. No, so, I immediately went to my father, honestly, when you said sort of, my mother and father, but my parents obviously had a huge impact on me. I was surprisingly, I was adopted. And so I feel this level of luck, serendipity, like something, honestly. The universe I had the most amazing upbringing. And that's not without, my father went bankrupt when I was 10. So I'm not saying, but if I was born a day earlier or a day later, I could have had different parents.
Right.
And that's not lost on me, right? And so the life I have could have been exceptionally different.
Wow.
And it really does, I'm constantly reminded of that. And I was reminded of that when I was a kid. And so I remember going on holiday for March break when I was probably about 13, and I met another family, and their daughter, who was about my age, she was adopted as well. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, I didn't know a lot of people that were adopted. Yeah. And that was one of the first times I went, oh, wow, I'm really lucky. Because when I came down into the lobby one morning, her and her sister and her mother were sleeping in the lobby because her father got so drunk, he put the chain across and they couldn't get in the room. And I was like, wow, that's just not in my world. Mm-hmm. Do you know what And, when you're that age, you kind of go, oh man, like that's just not something that I have to deal with. And she was adopted, I was adopted. I could have landed in that family.
Right.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. And my son's graduation was this past weekend, and so the speaker mentioned the coincidences, which is exactly what you're talking about now, that it's such a coincidence that we're all in this room together at the same time, even us having this interview with you. It's so random, and it requires us to have such different things that are coincide so that we can be talking to you today, that we should all be very thankful and aware that the connections we make, the people we speak to, the relationships that we have are very, very random, very, very chance-like.
Gratuitous.
Almost, right? They happen for a reason, but we have to be aware that they could have been some other things, 1 minute earlier, 1 minute later, as you put it. Right?
Yeah.
What was the name of your parents, by the way? What's the name of your dad?
Joseph Kelly. He would have been 101. And he was in the Second World War as a radio officer. And he many times was told he was never going to live. He left home at 14, like abject poverty, like dirt floor, one-room house. He came from Ireland, and so just went hungry a lot. Very, very smart family. My oldest uncle, his oldest brother, got a full scholarship to Trinity in Ireland and couldn't go because they had nothing. Wow. He just couldn't even get there. And so he came from a background where, he could have been, this is the fate that I've been served in life, and this is just how I'm going to be. But he was just not that. And so he inspired such everything. He inspired such hope and promise. He was driven by what was possible, not what was fed to him. And so he had a presence about him, and he had an amazing way of just getting on with it. And him going bankrupt when he was 10, like he just got up the next day and went right back to work and started again. And he was 52.
Wow.
And my mother had stayed home.
Right? Very, very few
Yeah,
people.
right?
Yeah. It's inspiring, and it's a pleasure that you had the opportunity to live with such a great family.
Yeah.
But he couldn't have done what he did without my mother, right? My mother was a nurse, and she gave up her nursing career for myself and my brother. And so my father was given that privilege because of the family that he had created with my mother. And so I just look at that and just say, anything is possible. We just have to see what's possible, and we have to really go for it. Like, just wake up with some energy every day and find a way, and not say, woe is me and poor me and everything's wrong and everything's difficult. There's always opportunity, and my father and mother, I think, were great examples of that.
For sure.
Thanks for sharing it.
Yeah. What incredible people. Well, you have a lot of experience to draw from, so I'm going to ask you a question that's going to be incredibly hard, I'm sure. But so looking back on those years, growing up with them, watching such resilience and capability and optimism, is there something specific that you can remember that you kind of look back and think, oh, that I can see kind of how that has shaped who I am now, whether it be just a characteristic of yours or specific to sustainability or your business or anything like that?
I guess two things would come to mind with that question. One of them was, I was probably about 15 or 16, and we went to a restaurant in Montreal, which is where I'm from. And one of my father's business associates came over to the table, sort of saw us and came over to the table. And he was, just saying hello to my father and that sort of thing. And he looks at me and he goes, your father's office, it's like the United Nations. And I was sort of young, but it was, we're talking in the 70s, right? And it was a lot of men running businesses, women at home. It was, white men doing, and when he said, your father's office is like the United Nations, I had never thought about it, but I realized that there was huge diversity within my father's office that you didn't necessarily always see. And it wasn't until that man highlighted it to me at that restaurant. He was almost sort of joking, but I was like, it was a real proud moment for me because I was like, well, that was just normal.
Yeah.
And so that's one. And then the other one was, I remember I was in high school and my father came home from work and he's like, what math books do you have? And he's asking me about my textbooks. And I said, what? And he said, well, a guy came in and applied for a job today. And I said to him, you seem too young. Like, why are you applying for this job? And he said, well, I've had to drop out of school because there's no father in my family and I need to, I need to make money. So my father made a deal with him and said, I will hire you, but you have to finish your education. So my father supported him through his education, and he ended up being a senior manager with my father and that sort of thing. And I would have probably never known that if my father hadn't come home and asked me for my books. Right. And so both of those were by chance.
Yeah.
And I don't know the hundreds of other things that happened. But I remember those two instances very, very well. And I think that they probably did have an impact on me and how I show up at work.
Incredible. Thank you.
So Tara, you studied marketing at Mount Allison University and began your career in the most Canadian way possible, hockey. You love hockey. Tell us where hockey comes into play and how you picked marketing of all the different career options that I'm sure you had.
So I was sort of like, I stumbled into university a little bit. I had, in Montreal, you have a thing called cégep, like it's college, in French. And so you graduate from high school at 17 in grade 11, and then you have 2 years of cégep, and then you go to university. And so because of my marks in high school, and my father was an engineer, and all I heard from all the guidance counselors were, you need to go into science because your marks are really high. You got to keep your options open. And so I went into science at CEGEP and I hated it. And so I was also a big soccer player. And so the soccer team was really good at CEGEP because all of the best players from all the high schools ended up on this team. We had 4 national players on our team, and I was really big in soccer. So I would stay for soccer season and then I would drop out. And my parents would lose their minds because I was a good student. And but I just could not see myself in a career that included science, to be honest. Like, I just because I was good at it didn't mean I loved it. And I remember dropping out of CEGEP and my physics teacher said, what are you doing? The people that drop out of physics are failing. He said, you have a 98 average in physics. And he said, like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I just don't know. Like, I just don't feel like this is where I want to be. And so, I'm not good at wasting time. I wasn't good at just doing it because that's where it was. I was like, and so I dropped out and I moved to England, and I ended up at the Cambridge Science Park at the Cambridge Innovation Centre. And it was 1980. Geez, I went to CEGEP a little while, so it was probably 85, 86 when I ended up in, and it was brand new. It was like an incubator. The Innovation Center where I was working. And it was where people had technologies that they were trying to commercialize. And I ended up getting a job there. And it was sort of an experience in the business side. And I thought it was really, really interesting. And while I was living in Cambridge, I called my parents and said, I'm going to go back to university. I'm going to go into business. And so that's how that happened. It was a very roundabout way. And I went into business, and not a word of a lie at the beginning. There was a guy that was a little boring, and there was another guy, like the head of accounting, got up and said, now in accounting, and it was like, and then the marketing guy got up and he's like, okay, and now we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going marketing. It's like, that's scientific.
Marketing is incredible.
2 choices.
Marketing is fun and interesting. I enjoy marketing a lot, despite the fact that I'm an engineer. So. Well, and tell us how then hockey. Because you're a soccer player then. I mean, and this actually really amazing for me because I'm a big soccer player too. So you played soccer while you were at Cambridge as well, or?
No, I played soccer at university. I played soccer in all the way through. Like I was sort of semi-pro in Montreal and then played at university. And then when I moved to Vancouver, my career started to take off. I was playing Premier League Vancouver, but I couldn't show up to practices and, that kind of thing. And so I wasn't the best friend of people on the team because the coach would put me out whether I made practice or not. And it was like, so I would go down to first division and there was but I played soccer. It was interestingly enough, when my husband said, I really want to move to Cape Breton, one of the first things I said was, there's no women's soccer. There was two things. I said, there's no international airport and there's no women's soccer. And he's like, are you kidding me? Those are your two objections to moving to Cape Breton? They were.
What position did you play, Tara?
Yeah.
I was always stopper, sweeper, center half.
All right. Well, moving on to something else. So then afterwards, you ended up graduating, and you first started working with the Canucks, Canadian hockey team, right? Tell us a little bit more about that, and then of course I wouldn't do a good job here. Kristi and I are both huge the Olympics fans, and we found out that you actually were very instrumental in winning the bid for the Vancouver 2010 Olympic Games. So tell us a little bit more about that, your experience with the hockey team, and then how that translated into the Olympic bid, and it must be very exciting to win.
Yeah, I was exceptionally fortunate. Again, my whole life, I've been exceptionally fortunate, honestly. From the minute I was conceived, which I wasn't supposed to be, and I've since learned, just in the last year, my biological father was a little bit of a Romeo, and and so I wasn't meant to be. And so, somehow I came into this world, was very fortunate with the way I was, with the family that I was adopted into. And then following university, my husband and I met in university, and he wanted to move to Nova Scotia right away. And I said, give me 2 years. Let's just go. Let's go have some fun. So I managed to squeeze 11 years out of him. We lived in Vancouver for 11 years, but we went to Vancouver. I had never been. I didn't know a soul. And so trying to get a job, right? I was like, okay, here we go. Like, we just landed there following graduation, got an apartment that had rat bait on the counter, which was a little terrifying. So there was a lot of cleaning and a lot of hole stuffing, because we didn't have any money, and went around, and I made a goal, honestly. I literally said, I need 12 months on my resume. I don't know anybody. I don't know anything. I don't have any experience. I have sort of small pieces of experience I need 12 months on my resume, and marketing needs to be in the name of the company because I'm going to do marketing. And so I did that, and I got a job. And 1 year to the day, I walked into my boss's office and said, listen, nothing about you, but this isn't what I want to do, but I'm looking for work, and I need to use the network that I've developed by working with you, and I don't want to do it behind your back, so complete transparency. I'm not going anywhere tomorrow. Promise you, not going anywhere tomorrow, but I'm going to look for work because I don't see sort of growth opportunity here. I don't see where I can sort of really develop. He's like, oh no, please don't go, and I'll give you a different position, and I'll do this, and I'll do that. And I'm like, no, even if I was running it, this isn't what I would want to be doing. And so I said, but I want to be completely transparent with you. I'm not going to go behind your back. And so I walked in the hall and said to somebody else, by the way, I'm looking for work. And they went, what do you mean? And within 2 hours, he walked out of his office and said, you need to call this guy. And I said, who's this guy? And he's like, just call him. He met you 3 weeks ago in this office. The meeting that he was supposed to be having was delayed. So I happened to be in the lobby, and I talked to him for about 10 minutes. And we talked about Ireland, honestly. We just had a conversation. Mm-hmm. But he remembered me. And then this other guy recommended me because he'd worked with me for a year. And the combination of those two things, I phoned this guy up, and he's like, you need to come and work. We're going to do this thing. And I was like, hold on, I'm not making coffee anymore. I'm not answering the phones anymore. I have very clear criteria. He's like, well, it's just going to be you and me, and you might have to make coffee. Oh, I don't know. He's like, come and talk to me. So I went and talked to him, and he literally pitched me on this job. And I was like, well, how do I trust you? And he's like, do you want some references? And I'm sure. So he gives me references, and I phone them that night.
Wow.
Because
Nice.
and turns out this guy was like Mr. Vancouver. He had been Deputy Minister of Tourism for Expo 86. He had been the president and CEO of BC Pavilion Corporation. He was like the guy in Vancouver, but I didn't know because I wasn't from there. And I walked into my boss's office the next day. I'm like, I just got offered this job by this guy, Mike Horsey. And he went, Mike Horsey offered you a job? I said, so you have to take it. I said, yesterday you told me I'm not allowed to leave. Anyway, I'm telling that long story, but it's kind of hilarious. But it just shows, again, chance, luck. But when you show up somewhere, show up.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know who he was when I was talking to him in the lobby. But the combination, and I hated my job for those 12 months, but I showed up every day and I gave it 110%. And the combination of that recommendation and me bumping into him, he had just been hired by the owner of the Vancouver Canucks to build the first privately funded arena. And they didn't have land, they had nothing. They had Mike Horsey, and I was the next hire.
Wow.
Congratulations.
And so that was a huge, and I just worked and I worked and I worked. And so they were like, okay, they just kept giving me stuff because I just kept doing it. So we got the land, and then we got the funding, and then we started building. And then the owner of the Canucks is like, I think we need a basketball team. So he pulled me into his office. He's like, we're going to go after an NBA team. And I'm like, okay. And so I was like, we need to, and I wrote down all the things. I'm like, okay, when do I have to have this by? And he literally said, well, the initial expression of interest is due next Friday. And I went, you tell the staff, whatever I ask for, they give me, no questions asked. I'll get this done by next Friday. And we literally had to put our books together at the airport because we didn't have time to get it. Like, it was insane. But yeah, I got in at a level where they were doing some significant things, and I sort of catapulted above. I didn't have to sort of grow in my career. I was sort of thrown in, and as I kept producing, they kept giving, producing, giving, producing, giving. And so there I found myself at like the age of 28, and I was sitting at the table with some pretty remarkable visionaries. And that really informed me. It was like, oh, you can sort of think this and do it. It was powerful at that age.
Did you end up getting the basketball team or no?
We did.
Which one was it? You left us
The
there.
Vancouver Grizzlies.
No way.
So they're down in Memphis now. But we did, and when we did the presentation to the expansion committee in New York City, Magic Johnson was also bidding. And so they had this, so there was three groups from Toronto, and there was one from Vancouver. And the NBA had said, we're only going to do one expansion team. So our pitch was do two and create a Canadian rivalry. So we sort of developed our pitch around that, and we did our presentations in New York. And I remember I'd forgotten my briefcase in the holding room, and Magic was going in to do the presentation after us. And so I walked in to the holding room, and it was Magic and all his entourage. And he said, how did it go? I said, it was amazing. He said, how are we going to do? I said, not well. And he said, what do you mean? I said, look around. You don't have any women here. And I left.
That's amazing.
That is awesome. That is great.
My one encounter with Magic Johnson, and I said, you need more women around you.
Yes.
In the boardroom.
Well, congratulations. There's actually a Netflix documentary or something on the
Yes.
team, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of my friends in there. I had long since left.
Wow. That's interesting. We'll put the link on the interview notes. But, well, and then from there, and by the way, one story is more exciting than the next.
I know. I can't wait to read your biography.
The Olympics. So through the same group, or what happened to the Olympics, and
Yes.
what happened?
So I had my first daughter, and I resigned actually from this sports organization because I was like it's a lot of work, right? And it's the entertainment business.
You basically
Sorry?
you had done it all at that point.
Right.
You got into the city.
Well, And I was just really focused on family, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. It's really hard to do one thing well.
Right.
And so I was coming, mat leave was coming to an end, and I went in and I said, guys, I'm going to resign. I'm not coming back because my family's too important. And I would get to work at 7 in the morning, and I'd sometimes not get home till midnight. And that, that wasn't all work. We were in the entertainment business. So there was a lot of really fun things, a lot of sports games and concerts, and I'm not trying to say woe is me, I worked all the time. It wasn't that at all, but it wasn't really conducive to having a family. And so I resigned and said, I'm going to go and do something else. And my phone rings a couple of months later, and it's literally the owner of the Canucks. And he hasn't even got off the plane yet. He's just come back from Nagano, Japan. And he said, we're going to go after the Winter Olympics.
Wow.
And I was like, no, Arthur, I quit because I have a family now. So he's like, come in and talk to us, he said. And so I went in, and it was another thing that was really sort of formative in my career. So there's a couple of things as part of that Olympic piece. They weren't going after the Olympics because they thought, let's go after the Olympics. They said, this is a catalyst for change. This is a catalyst to improve things. So after Expo 86, there was a kind of a lull in Vancouver, but there had been a lot of people moving there, and there was the transit system was really struggling, and the Sea to Sky Highway was really struggling, and there was a housing issue. And so they said the Olympics can be a catalyst for this. Because by putting on the Olympics, we're going to attract federal funding, we're going to attract corporate dollars, we're going to be able to address transit, we're going to be able to address housing. And guess what? It worked. So the Olympic Village was converted into more affordable housing. There's a Sea to Sky transit link between the airport into the city. Not Sea to Sky, the Sea to Sky Highway up to Whistler was improved. And then the SkyTrain, down to the city. So again, it informed me how business can be a catalyst for change. How when we think creatively, we can really change things. And we can really think about what problems need to be solved and use business as a vehicle to do that. So this was another example. And when I went in, interestingly enough, I went in and I said, no, I'm not doing this. Because I have this young baby, she wasn't even a year old, and I know what this is going to take. So they said to me, and this is back in 1998, and they said to me, what would it take for you to do this? And I said, a full-time assistant, I'll work 3 days a week. And they said, okay. Now that was unheard of back in the 90s.
Yeah.
There was no remote work. There was no, we were still faxing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And so they said, okay. And I was like, oh, and I'd be on the playground with my daughter, and I was doing this really amazing thing. And they were like, how did you get that? And I was on the playground with lawyers, accountants, people that had chosen family. And I'm like, how are we leaving this brain trust on the playground?
Yeah.
Right.
Why aren't we accommodating this within our work environments? Because I was fortunate enough to work with visionaries. I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by some of the smartest people in those early days of my career. So I had those luxuries, I'll call them. And I was like, we as business leaders need to create spaces where people can show up to work in a way that suits them, because we are leaving a brain trust outside of our boardroom doors because we're telling them they need to show up in a certain way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And so all of that has informed how I formed Ethical Swag, because at the end of the day, Ethical Swag, I was like, I want to hire for talent, not for location. Yeah. How am I going to do that? Oh, I'm going to do that by leveraging technology.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about, we could talk about so much. There's so much to dig into here. And I still remember the games. I still remember the Vancouver logo. Enrique and I were in Vancouver last year for the B-Corp Champions Retreat, so we got to see a lot of those sites, and it was so fun to see all of that brought to life. But we do want to talk about Ethical Swag, and I am really excited to hear how you have taken all of these experiences and all this knowledge and been able to package them in the way that works perfectly for you and for your team and really brings out the values and everything that you are most interested in seeing show up in the world. So let's talk about Ethical Swag. So you founded it 8 years ago. What sparked the idea? Obviously a very different path that you were on and then moving in this direction. So what is the gap that you saw? Where did this come from?
Yeah. I promise you, I didn't wake up thinking that we needed more pens with logos in the world or another company selling them. Like, that is not where this comes from. Pardon me?
There's some great Olympic merchandise out there.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. So, we've unpacked a little bit of my career, and I've literally worked in government, I've worked in startups, I've worked in professional sports. Swag was ubiquitous.
Yeah.
So when I was trying to think of what kind of business I wanted to start, it kind of didn't matter what, it mattered why. And when I looked at this industry, I felt that there was a disconnect between what people were saying about what they stood for and what they were putting their logo on. And it's a mature industry with no barriers to entry. So I thought, if I can prove that we can be successful while considering things other than just profit in this industry, people won't go, oh, I'm not Bill Gates, or I'm not Elon Musk, or I'm not Oprah Winfrey, or like, sometimes it's really hard to be what you can't see. And so sometimes when we look at these successes in the world, we immediately disqualify ourselves from being able to actually move the needle or change things because it's just too big and too grand, because you only hear about them when they're big and they're grand.
Yeah.
And so I was like, how do we embed practices into our core being as a business in a way that we don't leave people on the outside of the boardroom? And how do we do it in a way that we channel money into supply chains that are thinking about the things that are really important for the planet and for people? Because we've lost touch with what success looks like, as far as I'm concerned. Somehow we've normalized a handful of people getting really, really rich and us working our tails off.
Right.
And where did the middle class go in all of this? And where did family go in all of this? I've talked about family a lot because that's really, isn't that why we get up? Do we really get up? So that we have purpose through our work, but we also have purpose through our families. And somehow we've lost a little bit of that. It's sort of, the lines got blurred. And I was like, I want to create a business that's going to hire talent for talent's sake, not for where they choose to live. And I want to channel money into supply chains. We're not sitting here as Ethical Swag trying to tell anybody that we're better than anybody else at all. There's an amazing bunch of distributors and suppliers within the promotional products industry, and people kind of duck when they see me coming and go, oh, Ethical Swag, I don't know if my swag's ethical. And I'm like, we're not trying to shame anybody. We're not trying to say that you're doing it wrong. There's a lot of people within this industry that are absolutely doing the right things, but it's not necessarily transparent. It's not necessarily, you don't know, and knowledge is king. And so we just thought, we're just going to slice it a little differently and just let's look at who the suppliers are, where it's coming from, what packaging are they using. And we don't always have complete influence, obviously. As we grow, we have more influence. But what are the steps? We can vote with our dollars. So this pen, if I can get this pen from this supplier and they shrink wrap every one of them in plastic, and I can get the same pen from another supplier that polybags them 500 in a bag, I'm going to vote with my dollars.
Yeah.
I'm going to use less plastic on behalf of our clients. We do that every day.
Well, that's incredibly inspiring, and you're a masterful storyteller. And,
Yeah.
and it's part of the whole thing, right? Because at some point you have to reframe the climate problem, the climate action in such a way that inspires people to change, as opposed to trying to shame them into or depressing them into being more active. And I wanted to tell you or ask you a little bit about that. I mean, again, how do you do it? How do you make sure that people out there, how do you have this climate conversation with people that might not be as passionate about the environment or the families or the communities or the good of the planet? How do you engage with them through your company and your brand?
Well, interestingly enough, we're not in the business of trying to sell more. we're in the business of providing alternatives to people that are already buying. So far, our clients have self-selected. It's not a, you need to be thinking about these things kind of thing. We're sort of more like, let's just get a groundswell of people going, there's alternatives. I'm going to do that. Rather than trying to preach, we're just trying to do. Mm-hmm. And we're finding there's a lot of people that also want to do. And that's how we find our partners. That's how we find our customers. It's just that commonality. And because I decided a long time ago, actually, when I was doing the research into this industry, I had this gut feeling that there was an opportunity. And when I talked to a handful of people, and I'm fairly well connected through my past experiences, people that ran large organizations that talked about sustainability, I was like, silver platter, here's a solution for you. We got this. And I kind of got a glazed look, and I was like, oh, wait, hold on. I don't want to sell swag. I want to provide solutions. Mm-hmm. And if this doesn't seem to be a solution to you, maybe this isn't the company. And so at that point, I did some research, and I went, people aren't necessarily, it's not what you say, it's what you do that matters. I'm just going to say that. And I found that people said things, but they didn't necessarily do things, or it was too complicated sometimes at the higher level. So I was like, okay, how am I going to address this from a grassroots standpoint? Because I found that was where the real momentum was coming from. Sure. There was folks at the higher levels talking about it, but they hadn't operationalized it necessarily right through down into all of their procurement and all that sort of thing. And it was a complicated problem to solve. But when you come at it from a grassroots standpoint, and you say, okay, you're just this one order. We're okay with one order right now. Because we feel like the more we get those one orders, then they turn into 10, and then they turn into more. It's harder work. Putting a logo on 100 pens and putting a logo on 10,000 pens, you make a lot more money at the 10,000. Not gonna lie, that's an easier lift. Everybody's going for the 10,000, but we were like, how do we make it easy for the 100? Because that's how we're going to get people coming onto our train, right? And so that's kind of so it was a business model decision, to be honest.
Well, it's clear to me, at least, from the very little that I know you and your brand, that you're not here to make things the easy way, right? I mean, you're really trying to change, you're trying to inspire others, you're trying to really bring products that are memorable and care for the planet. And I think you mentioned it yourself. It's all about what you do. That's what really gets noticed. What you do, not what you say. So thank you so much, and congratulations. That's amazing and very inspiring. So thanks for sharing that business vision that you have.
Yeah, and speaking of, so you have made it easy. You are a mighty machine at Ethical Swag. You cover everything from A to Z, from graphic design to inventory management to kit assembly, pick and pack, online company stores. So you have done really taken all the guesswork out for people and made it easy for them to provide a sustainable solution. There's a lot of, especially, you've of course been around that industry a lot, but hadn't founded it before. So what did you learn along that lines and through those processes? What have been a couple of your biggest supply chain challenges, and what were some of your lessons learned?
Well, interestingly enough, if anyone told me that COVID was going to hit like 2 years after. So I founded the company, actually, just to go back, because you had mentioned 8 years, but I actually came up with the idea and incorporated in 2010.
Okay.
And I had 3 kids with braces in school, and I had a really nice job with a great paycheck and all those things. And having the experience of my father going bankrupt, I knew that this was going to take a lot. It's just, this isn't sort of a 9-to-5er kind of thing when you're trying to create the kind of change that I was wanting to do. And so I came up with the idea, never intending it to be my full-time hustle, to be honest. Okay. It was more to demonstrate to my daughters that you could come up with that idea and sort of do it off to the side kind of thing. It wasn't until 8 years later that I decided there's a whole bunch in there where my parents' house burnt down and my parents were in their 80s, and then there was taking care of them. And, I happened to be sitting in the in-law suite of the place that we had, so that we had them right with us until the end. And so it was 2017 actually that I went to my husband. I said, the kids are older, my dad had passed, and I got fuel in the tank, and it's time for me to go and do this. And I was in my 50s, kind of like my dad again. Again, I think that inspired me. My father, I don't feel like it's a race to the finish. I feel like life, if we find something that we're passionate about and we want to do every day, we shouldn't need to or want to say, oh, thank God I'm done with work at 65. Like,
Right.
Work gives me fuel. It gives me passion. I love it. I think that we've created an environment a lot of times where it's like, oh, like work is awful. But I've loved work at every stage. And this is the stage where I was like, how can I show that we can do things a little bit differently based on over 30 years of business experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And so what did those early days look like? How were you trying to figure this out? What were some of your big aha moments and challenges?
Oh, actually, it was interesting. I saw Roy Spence speak. So Roy Spence was a marketing guy that worked with Walmart, Southwest Airlines, and he was a keynote speaker at a conference I was at. And that was one of my aha moments, not gonna lie, where he basically said, you gotta make it simple. Like, people talk about mission and values and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, oh yeah, we have one of those missions. Let me look on the back of my business card and read it to you. And nobody's embodying it. Nobody's really feeling it. It's like, oh, we have a mission statement and these are our values. And so I was like, he's so right. And so I sat down, and I had a lot of people worried about me, friends and my husband, and it was the fall of 2017, and there was a lot of little chocolate bars from Halloween in my life, and I'd go into my office for like hours and eat little chocolate bars and research and work, and I was like, I have to really define what ethical means, because if I ask 10 people, I'm going to get 10 different answers, and I'm not trying to be something that I'm not, so let's be really transparent with what we are. And so I spent a lot of time on that, and it was painful. And then I got an aha moment when I finally sort of got okay, what are we trying to do in the world? And we want to create meaningful work. And we're going to do that by working with clients and suppliers that think about people and planet. Because we have a vision for a world where we all have access to success. Kind of simple.
Yeah.
But it took a long time to get there. Because simple's harder than the back of the business card mission statement that's like blah, 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 blah. Because it is hard to really drill, like, what does ethical mean? And I was like, okay, when I did my research into this industry, people said it's too expensive or the products are crap. So I'm like, how am I going to address those objections in a way that still allows us to be a successful business?
Right.
So I came up with good, better, best. We're going to rate the products on our website good, better, best. Really simple. You got to make it simple, because if you're, and then the end of use of this, and then the carbon capture of that, like, you lose people so quick. It's like Peanuts, like the mom in the background of Snoopy going, wah, 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 wah. And I was like, no, smiley happy emojis, good, better, best.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's how to inspire, as far as I'm concerned. Make it simple.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And if you can't explain it well or get through it quickly, then the other people on the other end of the line certainly can't get there any faster.
Well, and as we scale, it's really important for your team to embody it, because it's not the Tara show. We are ethical swag. It's not Tara. And so one day we were in a meeting and somebody said, oh, we're getting a lot of small orders. And like, they take a lot of work. And I said, well, maybe we need a minimum order threshold. Just because, this is getting hard. And one of my team members said, that's not why we're in business. We need to make it accessible. And I was so proud. It was one of my proudest moments. I was like, okay, team, now let's come up with a way to solve for this. Using technology, using whatever. But thank you for pointing that out. And that was a really happy moment for me, because it wasn't me saying it. It was one of my staff members embodying it. And you can't scale if it's the Tara show. It's not. They believe what we're doing is really important. They understand what we're doing. It's not a question. It was really interesting with all the tariff things that are going on right now. And we had a 1 hour meeting. And my daughter actually works with me, and she went to an event. She's in Vancouver. And she went to an event, and she said, my gosh, she said, they spent 2 hours talking about tariffs. And everybody in the room said they've spent the last 6 weeks talking about tariffs. We had a 1 hour meeting. And I said, well, unpack that for me. Like, what was the conversation? Like, I don't understand how, like, you spend 6 weeks on this. She said, they don't know country of origin of any of the products they sell. Wow. I was like, that's at the fingertips of everybody in our business. Mm-hmm. We built it that way because that's what we cared about.
Wow.
So it's proving to be really useful. And we did all the hard work when it was like, why are we doing all this hard work? But then when things get hard, the work is done.
That's incredibly powerful, and thank you once again for sharing this business knowledge with us and our audience. And as you said, like, doing things easier is incredibly hard. But it pays out, right? It pays out, and it's a simple message. I gotta tell the audience to go to your website because it's a beautifully designed website with really cool colors as well. So please go ahead and visit Ethical Swag website. I wanted to ask you, changing gears a little bit here, Tara. You've been in the industry for 8 years officially, maybe your whole life non-officially, because you've seen this back and forth. A lot of products seem to me that are not like very eco-friendly, and it's not like an industry that one would say, well, this is the poster child of an eco-friendly industry. It's pretty much the opposite, right? You see in this industry a lot of waste. You see in this industry a lot of people buying and selling and manufacturing crazy, random, useless swag. So have you seen a change or the desire for more environmentally friendly products growing? I mean, have you seen some trend heading towards where you guys are at, or you're still kind of one of the only ones kind of on that camp?
No, thankfully, I can say that I've seen a huge shift within the industry over the time that I've been there. Absolutely. Partially, I would say it's driven by how people are spending, what the customers are demanding, honestly. So it's sort of a push-pull, I would say. When I went in 2010, I started, and I didn't really start, but I kind of started. And I remember calling somebody, and they said, so you're going to limit the products that you're going to... Oh, I don't even think that was 2010. It was when I was doing my MVP website in 2017, when I launched it in 2018. I remember I was hacking technology. I was like, I need proof of concept first. I'm not going to go and spend a whole bunch of money on technology until I know this is something that people want. So I was looking at off-the-shelf website options that were white labeled that I could sort of then put, but I needed to hack it because I didn't want to be able to, my customers to be able to search the entire database of all products. I needed to vet who the suppliers were, where they were coming from, all those kinds of things. So I was looking to hack an off-the-shelf software from the industry. And I remember talking to one of the tech guys and said, yeah, well, can I do this? And he's like, well, yeah, but you wouldn't want to do that. And I was like, can I do this? And he's like, well, yeah, but you wouldn't want to do that. And I'm like, can I do this? And he's like, yeah, we could kind of do this, but I don't know why you'd want to do that. And I said, why wouldn't I want to do it? And he goes, well, you need access to all the products. I'm like, no, I'm trying to limit the product selection. He goes, nobody does that. And I said, yeah, so I think I'm onto something.
Right. That's exactly what I want to do. Right.
But that was only 2017. Yeah. But now I think COVID showed, like, we had huge growth in COVID because we were a B-Corp. We were already online because I had made decisions. And when we talk about eco, for me, sustainability is far more than eco. It's social and environmental. Mm-hmm. And so when I was looking at structuring the company, I was like, how do I do this in a way that's going to meet what our mission and values are? And it's like, we're going to leverage technology. And so every technology decision I made when I was setting the company up, it was based on being able to do it from a laptop anywhere. And so How are we going to make sure people can trust us? We're going to go after our B-Corp certification. These were the questions that needed answering. And these were the solutions I came up with. Technology, B-Corp, as a really simple example. During COVID, people are scrambling because people didn't have technology to be working remote. We were there. People started to see fish swimming back through the Venice canals, and they started to see the smog clearing up, and people started to see, wow, we can actually have an impact on the environment with the choices we make. This is kind of a hard choice, not gonna lie. The COVID thing was hard, but it created an awareness amongst the consumers and the companies, and we were there because we had a B Corp and we were online. And we were sort of ahead for those two reasons and many others, that we saw a big spike in our growth during COVID.
Yeah. Amazing. Incredible. What an exciting time for you. Well, every day sounds like an exciting time for you. What am I saying? It sounds like you put out so much energy. I love it. And I want to hear before we wrap up, tell us what are some of your future plans for Ethical Swag. One of the things that caught my eye on your website was that you're going to be releasing ESG impact reporting. So talk about what's next for you.
Yeah. So for me, it's really getting, I sort of think of Ethical Swag as a bit of a toddler right now, right? So we're relatively new in the overall scheme of things, sure. And I've been very methodical on how we've implemented our different elements of sort of what ethical means, and you have to have a solid foundation. Like in 2022, when we had huge growth, I was like, brakes, put the brakes on. We need to invest in technology, because if you grow too quickly, that's another problem. And also, you can lose. The more you hire, the more you bring other people on, you lose the core of what makes you great. And so I was like, pause, let's wait, let's not wait, but let's invest. So we've invested a lot in technology. We've invested a lot on the impact reporting. We've invested a lot in our foundational work for scale. And so I want to get that to the next stage. I want to be telling stories. That's what I love, about how we can embed these practices into the companies that we're starting in incubators. Like, I was told I was wrong. Thankfully, I was cocky enough and I had enough experience that I didn't listen to it. But what are the young entrepreneurs coming into the world, like going into incubators, and they're starting, like even in the universities, they're basically told, you can do the good stuff later. Go and make a bunch of money. Yeah. That's kind of the message that's being sent.
Right.
And I'm like, we are going to continue to see decline in our communities. We're going to continue to see decline on our planet if that is the way that we are going to go about it. And so for me, I'm really interested in showing you can do it, so you can be what you can see, and then talking about it, like with folks like you. I appreciate that you're interested in what we're doing while we're still on this journey, but I feel really sort of enthusiastic around how do we get it into the incubators? How do we get it into... And I love the fact that now there's a push-pull. I kind of did grassroots because I found when it was a top-down approach, it really wasn't working. But since COVID, I find there's more of a top-down. There's more of an awareness and how do we do this?
Yeah. Well, Tara, we were big fans of you and your company before we started talking and interviewing you today. But now we're just completely on your side. You have actually won us over, and I'm sure that you've won a lot of people that are listening to this interview as well. And again, thank you so much, and I know that I keep saying it's you, but it must be your amazing team and the culture that you have built, and so thank you for sharing it with us. You're also not only a good storyteller, but also a good writer. I actually found a lot of really good, interesting articles, one of them in particular called the Thoughtful Products Speak Louder Than Pledges, which is basically what you've been telling us. So to our potential female entrepreneurs out there, what would you tell them, in particular to the female entrepreneurs, to the female in the supply chain industry, to the women out there, things that actually have helped you? How can they build a purpose-driven, sustainable business and be successful in life? As you said, it's not about making money then doing good things. It's about giving back as you go. And honestly, I would argue that the more you commit towards the impact and purpose, the more money you will have. So it's not make money then have purpose. It's like if you don't have purpose, you will not have money and you'll go under for sure, especially now. So what would you tell to all those women entrepreneurs and business professionals out there that are listening to our conversation?
Seek out, I'm always seeking out people that have information that I don't have, that have insights that I don't have, that, this whole DEI thing. At the end of the day, like on my advisory board, I have a Trump supporter, I have LGBTQ represented, I've got women, I've got men. It's a volunteer, they're all there just for ethical swag. It's an advisory board. And we have the most incredible conversations. They don't know each other, any of them. But because they're so smart in their respective areas, we come out with better outcomes when we have conversations because we have a point of view from a whole spectrum, even though it's a small but mighty group. And so for me, I'm constantly looking to meet, talk to, learn from people that aren't like me. And from people that have done it and stumbled. Failure, my father went bankrupt, and I don't see it as a failure. I think it informed him for his next success. And so let's not beat up on folks that get it wrong. Let's improve over time. If maybe we made a mistake a few years ago, doesn't mean we're bad. Like this divisiveness and this, bad, good, right, wrong. I only want these people in my camp. And I'm not like that at all. I just think that I have a line in the sand. You got to be nice. I like smart people. I seek out smart people. I want to be inspired by people. And so don't sit behind your desk. I just got back from Chicago where I got to connect with some really fabulous people. I think it's important that we get out there and we enrich our knowledge with folks that have done it, tried it, failed at it.
Fabulous. Excellent advice. Thank you.
That was amazing.
Yeah. Well, final question. This is a terrific one for you because of your business, your philosophy, everything you ooze and are about. What does the phrase logistics with purpose mean to you?
Transparency.
Wow.
Love it.
Really?
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Tara. It's been a masterclass in business and passion and inspired us. So thank you so much for sharing a little bit of yourself, a little bit of your company. For everyone out there, if you enjoyed this conversation, please don't forget to follow us. And Tara, where can our audience contact you? What's the best way to get in touch with you and learn more about Ethical Swag?
So we own Ethical Swag across all kind of platforms. So ethicalswag.com and LinkedIn, Instagram. We're not on X, but we own the X handle. Facebook, and myself, Tara Milburn on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with any of your listeners.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much again. We keep saying thank you, and we mean it every time. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for your energy and all that you're doing. It is certainly a great inspiration to us, and I know it will be to our audience as well. And to our audience, as always, thank you for listening in. And if you enjoyed this episode, then stay tuned because we'll have another great one in 2 weeks. So we'll see you soon. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.